Okay, so we have our map of the stores at the mall. That's great. And we want to start modifying it. So one thing to start would be talking about the page layout of this page. When we talk about the page layout, I'm talking about this page here. Now, it's kind of a funny place that controls all that. If you go to File, and then you go to Page and Print Setup. At this point, I don't want to change the size of it. I just want to flip it to from portrait to landscape, because the data is going kind of like it's kind of thin, going left to right. So we want to flip the map, and then we'll be able to zoom in. So if you uncheck Use Printer Paper Settings, then you can start changing anything you want in here. And of course, you can make it a big poster, but we'll keep it at 8.5 by 11. I just want to flip to landscape. Now you can see that provided me a new background box, and so I have to resize my data frame box, they call it, to be the right size. So the other tool to introduce at this point is the drawing toolbar. And again, if you don't have it, you can go to Draw, and that's your toolbar. The reason I wanted that is because it has this little pointer, and with the little pointer, I can click on the data frame, and I can move it around. And I can put a corner down there in the corner, and then I can use this corner, and I can pull it over here. And now the two line up. So now my data frame is like the same size as the page layout. And so what that's going to do, to give you a quick idea, if we go to File, and then we do Export Map, we can export this as a PDF or a image. Let's just do a PDF. You can go to this drop-down menu here and say PDF. And I'll just put it on my desktop. And we can call it Untitled. 300 DPI and fast is fine for something this small. So I hit Save. So we're going to do 2 of these PDFs. We're going to do one like that, and then we're going to do one like this, where it's not lined up. You can see that over here, it's just not on that page, but we'll take a look at what we get as an exported map when it's off center. Alright, so let's go look at those. Alright, so here's the first one. So you can see this is the page, and it's got that little bit of gap I had in between the edge of the page, and then it's just it's punching out basically everything I had within that. And if we look at the other one, you can see it only got the portion that was on the page. Right, so like that kind of should help point out what that thing is doing, right? So so when you go into the page and print setup, you can change the surrounding box, and that just defines your print settings. So I'm going to put it back in within the boundaries of my box, and then I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to hit on the layout toolbar. I'm going to go to the extent of my zoom to a whole page is one of them. So it'll just zoom me right to the whole page, so you don't have to zoom in on it. A lot of times people get confused, and they'll like start panning around, and they'll just go off the page, and they'll just be white. They'll be like, where is my page? And it's okay. You just want to go to this button, zoom to a whole page, and it will bring you back to your page. Again, after the change, I want to right-click and say Zoom to Layer. And since it's wide, it's thin, it now is even more zoomed in, which, it's so zoomed in, you kind of want to not put your data right this close to the edge of the map, so maybe I'll hit this fixed zoom out a couple of times. And that looks pretty good. And maybe I want to make my symbols a little bit bigger now that they're symbology, properties for all symbols. Make these 18. Okay, there's my bubbles. And then let's make my text a little bit bigger, maybe. Oh, whoops. I can just make the symbol size bigger here. And then let's label it with the store name. And let's do the key numbering again. There we go. That's pretty neat. So not bad, right? Like we can actually tell where all the stores are now, and the labels are nice and big. I don't like the width in between, or the height in between there. Let's see if we can. Hair Excitement. That's a good name of a store. I always liked Hair We Are where I went as a kid. I'm just going to unstack those. I like that better. It's easier to tell. Okay. Then, oh, actually, this is more effective if I do the color as the type of store and I do the name of the store as the label. So I think I had it better to begin with. Oops. Oh, I just did the opposite of what I wanted to do. So I want to have the label be the name of the store. I want this color be just the store type. So I have these store types. If you pick a different color ramp, there's a whole bunch of them, but this random color one is always the kind of a go-to. And if you want to get a new mix of colors each time, you can just keep picking it, and it will keep applying a new mix. So anyway, there we go. Now we have type. So one thing we might want to do is label, put a legend on here for what color each type of store is represented by. So we have all this space on the edge of the map, which we're going to use to put our legend in. A couple ways to do this. One thing I like to do first is draw a box to put my label and my legend and things in. So I'm going to use the drawing tool to put a box, a rectangle, in this corner down here. So let's just zoom in. Oh, I zoomed in. If you hit Z, it automatically switches to the zoom in tool, and then when you undo Z, it flips back to the tool you were on. So you can zoom in like that. So I'm going to start in the corner here. I'm going to draw a box. Okay, now my box, I can right click and go to properties, and I can make it a white box with you want to make it the same black as the border of the map, or else it'll look funny if it's gray. So let's just do all black. Now it's basically the same. A lot of times you can't really line these up perfectly, so you got to zoom in and kind of move it with the arrow keys. If you have a, doesn't have to be perfect, but I like it like that. So then we're going to do, we're going to add the map elements, right? So that was adding just a box, and now we're going to add in the other things that I've mentioned. So if we just do insert, and we have the options that we're going to use today. Legend, north arrow, scale bar. If you had a neat line, it's the same thing as what I just did with the box, but just add a legend. We kind of did this last week, but to go over it again, the only thing that I want to show is this shops at Biddeford, which has the name and the type. So I'm gonna click on blue lights. I'm gonna shift click on the bottom, down to the bottom, and I'm gonna hit the arrow button over. So this legend items will have what's in your legend. This is what's not in your legend, but is in your map layers over here. Next. I don't usually have a title. I like to use this text add thing here in the drawing to put text on my map. So next, and then I sometimes have a border and a frame on here but I like to put the boxes in instead, so I have more flexibility. And then if you don't do that, you don't have to set a lot of those settings. Okay, so now we have a nice legend. We've got to make it fit in here. So we can first just make it smaller. Didn't really work very well. I can undo that Oop. Can't undo that. Let's see. Make this text bigger. Wow. That got weird. So I'm going to remove that one. Let's insert a legend again. And then not resize it like I just did. Oh, okay. This is one thing I was looking for. If I do 2 columns, it's going to split it into 2 next to each other, so that should be easier to fit on there. And if you don't do the other stuff, you can just flip right through to the end of the wizard. 2 columns. All right, great. So then the thing is, it's linked to what's over here. So if I change this name to Biddeford Crossing with a capital letter and nice spaces, it changes over there. It's nice. If I go into the symbology and I remove all other values, because I know if I hit the count, there aren't any other values, so it's irrelevant on the legend, that will go away. It's starting to look nicer. If I remove the word store, that will go away. You know what? I think I would want to actually remove all of the labels so they line up nice. Put my legend in, and then I can just add in text. Biddeford Crossing stores by type. So I click on my text, and I can change it in the drawing box here. And if I wanted to put this on top, I could always, leave a little bit of space, and that's not too bad. Oops. Kind of line it up. One of the things you can do once you have multiple things on a map is you can click on one of them, and then shift-click, hold shift and click on the other one, and then you can go to this other toolbar called the graphics toolbar. And you can do alignment, which is like, this one is like align left. So they line up, well, I'll make it more clear. So if I had them like this, and I clicked on them both, and I hit align left, they would line up. The graphics toolbar is way easier than, you can also go, and you can go align, and you can use it here, but it takes a lot more clicks. There's like 6 different ways to do everything in ArcMap, so. All right, maybe we'll do that here. And then I can always move the map around a little bit. So to make room for my legend, I'm actually going to move it up. Great. Cool. So then basically we have our title, which is also the telling you what it's making a map out of. Make that bold. And then we want to add a scale bar, which is a helpful thing, so people get an idea how big this area is. Now, on a map like this, there's an argument to be made that you don't need to put a scale bar because everybody knows how big a market basket is, basically. And so they're like, well, clearly, and if you see parking lots and cars, you could also make the argument, well, of course, people know how big this area is. But a lot of times you can't tell. So you can ask yourself that, and you can use your cartographic license, they call it, to decide whether or not to put it on there. It's a very artistic kind of thing. So if we do insert a scale bar, you have a lot of options to begin with. I like the first one, but I don't have a strong opinion. I kind of actually like this one too. I like very simple scale bars. Because a lot of times, you have a scale bar that has like 6 divisions in it, and it's got, all right, here's 1 to 100 feet, here's 100, 200, 300, and it goes on, and it's like half the width of the bottom of the map, and it's like, well, you really only need one of those things, because what scale is it's going to tell you, this far on the map equals this far in the real world. So if you have a ruler, you can just basically figure it out. But maybe there's a reason why you want it to be a certain width. Like if it's a map where you're driving somewhere, Usually by mile is good because people know how far a mile is. If it's like a walking around, it's good to have it by, like, I don't know, yards maybe, because people know how long a football field is, you know. So thinking about that kind of thing is good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add that first one. You can see they start you off. They don't do you any favors by adding in all these divisions, right? So we're basically gonna double click on it, or you can do right click properties, and that's the same for everything basically. And you can do number of divisions, number of subdivisions like 0, and just apply, right? So that took out those subdivisions. Then I'm just gonna do 1 division and hit OK, and you can see it only has 1 division. And then I'm going to do adjust width instead of division value, which just means division value is how do you chop it up. Width is like how wide is the actual bar. And then you get to pick how wide it's going to be. So let's say we want it to be, instead of 0.15 miles, just 0.1 miles. Apply. Okay, so now we basically have everything that we wanted, except we don't need this middle one. So we can go to numbers and marks. And instead of divisions and first midpoint, we can just do just divisions. Those are the best steps to creating a really nice looking scale bar and ArcMap. So that's basically it. I guess the other one is if it's miles, you can change it to MI. The label there. And then just because it's too wide, maybe quarter mile. Is that what that would be? Anyway, half of a tenth of a mile. So then, oh, I meant to do north arrow. Oops. I'm going to hit everyone. I mean, there's another argument to make that when you have a map like this, you don't need a north arrow, right? Because it's assumed that it's up, right? If you rotated the map, which is completely possible, then you might need one. So one thing you can do, use the data frame tools. There's only like one tool on this toolbar, and it's the rotate data frame tool. So we can rotate it if we want, which is very unhelpful. I would never recommend that, but if you did, your north arrow would rotate. Look at that, it's sideways now. But if I remove that, it'll pop north again. So it's kind of random, but I've seen reasons to do it. Yeah, I would say just put a north arrow on because you're supposed to in school. And then once you get out of school, you can choose whether to put a north arrow on your map, basically. All right, so it's funny. The only other thing that's things that are, well, there are things that are neat that if you, I'll show you 2 more things. You can do dynamic text, which is pretty neat. So if you did the current date, it would give you, and it always adds this text right in the middle where you can't really see it. So just know that it's right there, and it will always have the current date whenever you open this. You can do insert, a whole bunch of other stuff, document path, what coordinate system you're using. But the data-driven stuff is really the cool stuff. So what you can do is like make map books. Like we could make one map for each store on this, and I'll show you that someday. And it would pop to each store, and it would make a separate map, and it would update the text of what the name of the store was or something in your legend. So you could export a whole series of maps at the same time, and it would continuously update that text. For now, there's some cool ones right at the top, like what I just pointed out. The other thing, how do I do that? Oh, if you do, okay, so you see here, you have this credits text here, right? And I just put my stuff right over it, right? If you want to make sure to have that on there, which you should when you're in school, again, put the credits on your map of like where you got the data, and where it all came from, which I think this credit says where how old the imagery is, actually. If you do insert dynamic text service layer credits, it will pop it out from that little box there, and then you can move it around. Maybe move it off the map if you want. But if I was doing that, maybe I'd copy and paste my white box, make it smaller, and put it down below that so I could see that better. And then if you have this issue where it's on in front of it, then I could right-click and say Order, Send, or Send Backward. And now my text is in front. So on this thing, you can send things forward and backward, just like your layers on this side. And again, if you right-click, there's a whole bunch of options, so always right-click. And then, of course, you could always perfect it, which I do appreciate perfecting this because it looks a million times nicer. And it looks very unprofessional to have these not lined up. So if you take it, you zoom in on it, you take it, and you move it down right on top of that line. And if you need to go a little tiny bit, you hold Shift and you hit up. Do a little tiny bit of movement to get it perfect. You can tell when you look at it on a PDF if it's not perfect. So it's like, then I'm going to take this one and basically do the same thing. Hold Shift, move it a little bit, see it close up that gap. Tiny bit, beautiful. I know I did. Look at that, unreal. Wow. Whole page. And then I'm going to draw a box around all of it and take it to the corner. Beautiful. It's a good map. What was the other thing? I want to show you one more thing. Oh, okay. So then the other thing that we can do sometimes is like, you want to show people where in the world this is. So like, they don't, if you look at this and you don't know where Biddeford is, you have no idea where small is. So you can do insert data frame. So, all of this was done on this box, which is this data frame, right? So when we can rename that to be Biddeford Mall Zoom In. And then we can insert another data frame, which comes in as another box here. And we can call it Biddeford Area. And we can make it in this little corner. Okay, and then let's pull in our main towns file. And I just pulled it over in here. And then what we can do is double click on Biddeford area, and we can do extent indicators. And because there's two of these things, because there's two data frames in one map, you can tell one data frame to put the extent of the other data frame on its map colored in a certain color. So you can say, use that one, move it over there. By the way, make it big, thick, red outline. And okay, you can see now it's got a red outline of where we're zoomed into on this other map. So if you were to zoom in on southern Maine, and somebody knew what they were looking at, or at least, wait, let's say Biddeford, I guess, this area, and you wanted to say, at least label what town was around there, just turn that on. Ooh. So here we go, let's clean this up. Let's remove duplicates. We learned how to do that earlier. Oh wow, let's first start the labeling engine up. My gosh. Clean it up a little bit. Let's first remove the water. I think it was heat. Oh, land. Yes and no. Let's remove the ones that are no. Make brown land. Great. And then let's remove duplicates. You can see it's different for polygons. I'm not expecting you to be able to do all this. For homework, it's just going to be do like, I think it's 5 or 6 things that we learned today to improve your map. But I think I'm going to up that to like just 10 of these things. I mean, I'll talk about it in a second. One of the things you can do with a data frame is you can set the background color of the data frame to be blue. And this is the last thing I'm going to do. And that's the water, and that's your nice map. So that's pretty simple, just town boundaries, blue background, and we can show you where we are in Biddeford. Oh, this is the mall, that's right. Oh yeah, well, see now I had no idea where that was. Now I do. Imagine that. Mapping class. Sweet map. All right, so then the last step is to export it as a PDF, like we did before, file, export map. These settings are fine. Just name it. Chris Brown, Biddeford Mall. Sorry, I guess I kind of did the whole. It's kind of a different way to do it. Yeah, I know, right? I'll be able to know if it's the same one. Send me this PDF. I'm just kidding. Yeah, great. So let's move up. Let's talk about homework before we go. Oh, that's the map. Oh yeah. Can you send that to us so we have it in Totally. I love it. Huh? Yes. Let's stop the recording.